Welcome back to another episode of Real Food and Gum Flaps. It's your host Lace Flowers, and we are back again today to do some more real food and gum flapping. So last time I left you on a bit of a cliffhanger, and I've had to change the angle of my camera because I got to charge my phone, and yeah, the whole setup is just a bit long and I haven't figured that part out yet. So you should be able to see what I'm doing very nicely. So what is the dish of the day? I have some lovely chicken quarters here, which I'm just taking the skin off. Quite slippery and slimy, but lovely chicken quarters. And this dish doesn't actually have a name. It's one of my one pot things that I do when I'm feeling a bit tired and I just want to do something quick. I don't want to be messing about with stuff, and but I want something tasty to eat. So this is a one pot dish where I've got a bit of a mishmash of ingredients, and also using what I have available in the fridge. Bit low on them vegetables right now, so throwing chicken at myself. So just using what I've got. So this is a one pot chicken and rice, and it's going to be absolutely delicious. So you can watch me do that. And guess who's coming out to play today? Manky Pan. Yeah, Manky Pan is back, and this is what we're going to cook in today. So yeah, last time I left you on a little bit of a cliffhanger, I know, and we were talking about growing up on a northwest London council estate, and I told you about all the fun and games that we used to have when I was a kid. And then I said that something happened and I had to leave the estate. So I'm going to tell you a bit more about that now, and also how it shaped the woman that I am today, and why I never get homesick. I'll take you back. So we're back on the estate. It's night time, okay? It's dark. I'm in bed, and I've got a talent show the next day. I was actually going to be singing a duet with my friend Janelle in school. So I'm gone to sleep in my flat. You know, by this time we have moved out of my grandma's house. Moved out when I was about 4. With my mum to a flat that was just adjacent to my grandma's. So we weren't too far away. I could still see my grandma's flat from where I lived, and she could still see ours. So that was lovely. So I'm in bed, tucked up and asleep, and I hear voices, but I can hear my grandma's voice, and I'm like, it's the middle of the night. What is my grandma doing here? Like, she has her own bed, she's got her own flat. What's she in my house for? So I got up and I said hello. I don't know what time it was, but maybe it was about 10 o'clock or 11 o'clock at night. And my mum said, don't worry. There's just a little fire in her grandma's block. So, you know, she's just come here to kind of wait for the fire brigade to sort that out. Go back to bed, go back to sleep. So I was like, all right, Mum, cool. So took myself back to my room, back to bed, went back to sleep. And I don't know how much time passed, but I remember Mum charging into my room. Get up! And I'm like, what? You just told me to go back to bed. What happened to you? Why do I have to get up? And she's like, put some clothes on, get your coat on. We're going outside. I'm like, why are we going outside? And she said, that we're just being evacuated because of that fire in Grandma's block. So I was like, okay, right. Hopefully this won't take too long then. Just a precaution, nothing serious. So got up, went outside, and stood on the grass. You know, we've got this big grassy kind of area in the middle of all of the flats. So the flats are kind of around it, and there's this grass in the area. Remember I told you where we used to play pom-pom? That sort of area. So we're there. My grandma's there in a lilac coat because it's winter time. It's about 5 days or so before Christmas. So she's there in a lilac coat and her slippers, and you know, and she's got her glasses, and she's got a Motorola mobile phone. Don't know if any of you guys listening remember the Motorolas when they first came out. They were like bricks, massive things. She got a Motorola, she got her glasses and her slippers and the pajamas that she's wearing. And very similar for everybody else that's outside. We're all kind of, you know, just wearing little coats and come out in our night clothes, thinking this is just going to be quick, yeah? So I'm standing there and I'm watching this fire blaze, and this fire is looking serious. It's looking like a big fire. And I remember all of these fire engines coming, and that it started with just one or two, local fire engines. Before I know it, we got fire engines from everywhere across London. I'm talking Putney, Chelsea, Hayes, everywhere, and they're all just coming up the road to the estate and just parked up, loads of them. And none of them were doing anything. I'm like, yo, like, why are you not putting out this fire? And turns out they weren't doing anything about the fire because there was asbestos in the building, and they weren't equipped to deal with asbestos fires. So we just stood there. And I remember watching the ceiling of my grandma's flat just cave in. You just saw that fall down, and this fire just got bigger and blazed harder. And there came a point when I realised my babyhood has just gone up in smoke, complete smoke. Like, everything is destroyed. My grandma's grand piano that she used to play, she's brilliant at playing the piano, and she's always practicing for choir at the church because she was head of the gospel choir, and that grand piano was now completely destroyed. Everything was destroyed. All them family photos, the kitchen, the china plate, any back bacon that was waiting for me for breakfast, completely destroyed. And this fire burned all night, and we were eventually moved to a local church for refreshment and somewhere to lie down. And then we went to the civic centre the next day, like the council building where we were supposed to get temporary accommodation. So obviously I wasn't going to the talent show because now we're not allowed to go back home. Okay, even though my flat wouldn't actually burn at that time, not when I was standing there watching it, but because they were all interconnected, they're worried about structural damage and, saying there's going to be potential water damage and all that. So we went off to go to the civic centre, still in our pyjamas, mind you. And they were like, oh yeah, we're going to sort you out with some temporary accommodations, and we're going to sort you out with some clothes. We're gonna make sure that you're warm. So for those of you who are familiar with the high street shops back in the day in the UK, you will know about Debenhams, yeah? Let me know in the comments if you know about Debenhams, the high street department store that was very nice quality stuff, but it was pricey. It was like Selfridges but a bit less, yeah? So they gave us a £100 gift voucher for Debenhams. You couldn't even buy the family a pair of socks each for £100 at Debenhams. So as much as it was a very kind gesture, I'm thinking that it would have made more sense to give us like £100 in Primark, because then maybe we would have been able to actually get some clothes. But we had the voucher for Debenhams, and my grandma went to stay with my godmother, who also lived on the estate, who was considered like almost at the top. She was like in the middle. Her flat was not connected to our flats, so she didn't have to evacuate. So she went to stay there, and we ended up being put in some empty house around the back of Harrow. Any of you that are familiar with Harrow, you know about Gold's Gym, and it was behind there. And I remember that first night, we had nothing, just the clothes we were wearing, whatever we bought from Debenhams with the voucher that didn't buy anything. And that house was cold, it was freezing, and there were these curtains up at the window. So I remember my mum pulling the curtain down from the window and wrapping me up in it to try and keep me warm while we waited for, like, I don't know, volunteers or whatever to bring blankets and what have you. And that night I just cried. I'm gonna season this chicken now, so I'm gonna make it ready to taste good. Make sure that you can see what I'm doing in this kind of dodgy lighting. But I just cried that night. All I wanted to do was go home, and that's the one thing I couldn't do. I couldn't go home. And I also knew at that point I was never going to go home again, at least not to live. There was no way after that fire that was still blazing, mind you. It blazed for a couple of days before it kind of put itself out. There was no way after that fire we were going back to them flats. They were built temporarily. They ended up staying up far too long, and eventually they took themselves out. It was an electrical fault. And I knew I wasn't going home. None of us were going to go home. Like, life was never going to be the same. There was going to be no more pom-pom, no more elevated hide and seek. There's going to be no more ice cream vans, and no more friends that I grew up with. Like, that was all different now. And in the space of not even 24 hours, we were completely dispersed. Everyone was gone, put in different places. And I felt so homesick that night. I cried and I cried and I cried. And I think that lesson, that time in my life, was setting me up to not only lose something that was really, really dear to me, which was the place I grew up, but also setting me up for the future that I didn't know what was going to happen yet, but setting me up for being away from home, being in spaces and places that are unfamiliar, and navigating how to turn those places into home, wherever they were, whatever the circumstances, because that was one of the biggest losses and the only time in my life I ever felt homesick. I just wanted to go home. And that didn't happen. You know, eventually we were rehoused in Stanmore. If any of you know about Stanmore, that's where I was living. My grandma, it took a long time for my grandma to get rehoused, but she was rehoused near Harrow and Willstone. And as for all my friends that I grew up with, I never saw them again. You know, back then we didn't have no Facebook. Yeah, I don't even not even sure if MySpace was a thing. You know, remember MySpace? Let me know in the comments if you know about MySpace. But all this social media stuff didn't exist then. So it wasn't a matter of, you know, we'll just add each other and chat to each other, or we'll just, you know, pull out our cell phones and talk to each other on WhatsApp. Like, we didn't have phones. Adults had phones, some of them. And they didn't have apps on them. You just called and texted people. That was how it worked back then. And so that was it. We were just dispersed into other places and never saw each other again. And it broke my heart. It broke my heart. And many years later, you know, now I'm living across Central and South America for the last 4 years. And even before that, I lived in many spaces and places, very unusual, some of them, all over the UK. Never stayed anywhere too long, always somewhere, always moving around. Lived in caravans and static caravans and caravans with awnings and normal houses. Lived all over the gaff, on traveller sites. I gave birth on a traveller site actually, unassisted, but that's another story for another day. And I never felt homesick. I never felt, I want to go home, because home became wherever the kitchen was. That was one of the things I took with me from my childhood, from spending so much time with family, eating, around food and cooking, and that sort of family community that came with all of that food. That travelled with me. That was one thing that could not be taken away. That was one thing that quietly travelled in hands. You know, it's that generational knowledge, that skill that travels in hands. And because it travels in hands and it travels in the DNA and the fibre of who you are, you can take it with you anywhere. And that is essentially how I created home wherever I was. It didn't matter where I was. Home was where the kitchen was. Home was where the food that I created and shared with my family and my friends and the local community and people I don't even know, neighbours and all of these things. That was where home was and always has been for me. And I think that's why when it came to leaving the UK and moving across continents, across countries, across, I think since I've been out here, I've had about 20 odd kitchens. You know, places that I've stayed, places that I've lived, whether they've been Airbnbs or short-term rentals or long-term rentals or whatever those places have looked like. I think I've had about 20 odd kitchens and have never once felt homeless, So very grateful to have had that experience of losing home, and also very grateful that nobody died. I should share that as an important aspect. Nobody died. And the reason nobody died, before I wrap up, is because there was a man who lived on the very top floor above my grandma. His name was Chris, and everyone labelled him Crazy Chris. He kept strange hours. He was a bit of an interesting character, and he had a name. People called him Crazy Chris. I don't know if he was crazy or not, I didn't know him, but he had a name for himself. And because this man kept the hours that he kept, we're just going to move to start fraying. So because he kept the crazy hours that he kept, he actually came home and noticed the fire whilst it was still small. He went round and knocked on all of the neighbours' doors, including my grandmother, and said, you know, there's a fire, we need to evacuate. Here's Manky Pan, by the way, still waiting for this one to be replaced, but until then it's the old and faithful. But if you'd like to do something about it, links in the comments. Would appreciate a new one anytime now, but I do love this pan, and you're going to see why in a minute. But he helped everyone evacuate, and he is the reason that nobody died in that fire. And he was a hero. He's always going to be a hero, because he's the reason nobody died. He got everybody out. So I think that's another lesson for us in life. You know, labeling people because of their quirks or their eccentricities, it doesn't make them bad people. It doesn't necessarily make them weird or dangerous. And you know, you can alienate people or exclude people for all the wrong reasons, and then they turn around and become heroes. I think that's pretty impressive, to be honest. He could have just let everyone burn, you know. You lot treat me horrible, fuck you all. He could have done that, but he didn't. He saved everyone's life, and for that I'm just testing the wheel. I'm very, very grateful, and will always be. So that is the story of losing my babyhood home, and how it helped me never feel homesick in all the travelling and spaces I've been and all that since then, because the kitchen has travelled with me. So that's where I'm going to leave that for today. Going to get these chickens frying up. I'm just going to quickly brown them, and once they're browned, I'm going to take them out and get my other bits and bobs on the go. So yeah, thank you for coming along for this story with me, this ride while I'm cooking some dinner on this Friday evening. And yeah, go ahead and download the first chapter of my book by heading to my website, links in the comments. If you like these kind of stories, you're going to find a lot more in the book, and you've got the first chapter there for free. And if you're loving the kind of kitchen diaspora that we're talking about, you know, how cultures and food and recipes travel across borders, you're going to be hearing a lot more of that too, because that's what we're here to talk about, and all the fun and games that goes along with it. So until then, keep eating great food, and in the meantime, make sure you like, subscribe and share. Real Food on Gunflax channel, yeah?